go. It's another episode of the Wobcast 2.0. I am your host, Wobby, here to break down all things Minnesota Vikings, coming off yet another victory for the purple and gold. This one, a rare road victory at Lambeau Field for the Minnesota Vikings, as they now entrench themselves squarely in the thick of it in the NFC and the NFC North, with the Detroit Lions still to play a game on Monday night against the Las Vegas Raiders. Lots to get to just from that standpoint of things, but of course there's the unfortunate elephant in the room, which is the Kirk Cousins injury, which makes this victory Monday a much more somber occasion than one would hope or expect. Lots to get to, lots to break down. To help me do that is my partner and co-host. As usual, he joins me. It's Giles. Hey, partner. How you doing?
Hey, happy Monday. This is usually where I say we've arrived at the best day of the week. Now, that's a little tough saying in the context that Kirk Cousins is out for the season. However, in the true spirit of my comment about Mondays are the best day of the week, it's always a good day to hit reset, right? A good day to reset and try to find out how to go win, because life will always punch you in the face in some way, shape, or form, and how do you recover from that? And we'll get more into it, but if you look at the Minnesota Vikings and all the ways that we've been clicking up until this point through 8 games, if you're going to try to put in a lesser quarterback, I'm glad it's with this type of team. If we have any semblance of possible success going through the rest of the season, our offensive line is performing well, our weapon sets are performing well, JJ's hopefully scheduled to come back within the next few weeks, the defense is doing well, so now is time to really see what our system can produce when your starting quarterback goes down. Yep,
that's right, and we're going to talk about Cousins, the injury, like everything about it, what to do next. When it comes to the locker room and the team, they were certainly aware of their quarterback's injury during the fourth quarter yesterday, and then during the celebration, the post-game victory locker room speech by the head coach. I'm sure the interviews post-game at their lockers, you could probably sense some downtrodden moods. But seriously, I know it's the quarterback, and it's a season-ending injury. There's just so much going on with a team. There are so many people working so hard in their little corner of the locker room and of the team. And so many different components right now are playing well, Giles. Mm-hmm. I think they had 5 games in October and they went 4-1. They've won 4 of their last 5. Mm-hmm. And if you look around the NFC, they're, as I said at the top, they are right in the thick of it right now after starting 0-3. Mm-hmm. That all of that's kind of going in the right direction, that even though it's a season-ending injury to the quarterback who is playing at an MVP level, it's still, the attitude is still like, we got to keep going. We're going. We can still do this. And I know that sounds crazy, but it is how it is in the NFL. It's just the nature of the sport. And it's because on Sunday what you see is you see a concert, a symphony. You see an organized circus of balancing acts, and there's 3 rings and a main event, and there's you see this all organized and everyone's lock in step. But during the week with practices, I mean, it's organized chaos. It's compartmentalized. Special teams is over here doing their thing. Offensive line is over here doing theirs. Mm-hmm. And right now, so much of that is going well for the Vikings that even with this injury to Cousins, I know that they're going to sit there and be like, they're going to still believe that they can do what they want to do this year. And to a lot of people listening and to people who watch games on Sundays, you might not believe that, but that's how it is inside the building. And so I hear what you're saying, Giles, about, you were pointing out all the things that are going well, all the things that are a credit right now to the Vikings that can help them win games, and that is how they're looking at it. JJ likely returning, defense rounding into form, having an identity, offensive line continuing to trend up. So I would much rather see this thing go forward with them healthy and with the quarterback in tow. That's not the case, but I'm still excited to see how the team responds, because what I've seen, they didn't win 4 of their last 5, Giles, because Cousins just carried them through everything.
That's correct. Yep.
They won 4 of their last 5 because a lot of parts of the team are playing well.
Correct.
And those all can still play well without Cousins. So I'll be curious to see the response that this team gives Kevin O'Connell and the fan base.
And I think it's important to note that there have been plenty of winning football teams that have gone the distance in the NFL over the past 20 years with, dare I say, subpar quarterbacks. Now, you can't technically win a Super Bowl with a trash quarterback, but there's been plenty of situations where there's been an average quarterback that's been able to ride and operate a well-humming full unit of an NFL football team. So I think there's a chance that we could get this thing back on the rails if we get the right guy under center. Now, maybe the Vikings think that's Jaron Hall. I have my own analysis of him, or maybe they think it's someone outside the building. But I think regardless of what that looks like, I think they're going to have to make a decision between now and 3 p.m. tomorrow.
Well, let's talk about it. As I was prepping for this week's show, Giles, I opened up my outline that I used, my template that I use, and it opened up to last week's. And last week's title was A Season-Changing Victory, as the Vikings defeated the San Francisco 49ers. And I'm like, same thing applies. It was a season-changing victory. Oh, my gosh, but just in a more negative way. All right, well, whenever this happens, Giles, there's a few different ways you can go, right? You can go next man up. So that would be Jaron Hall, Nick Mullins, and or Sean Mannion. They literally are the next 3 that you could choose from to be next man up. Now, Mullins, I believe, is hurt and not ready to come back.
I think he's on IR, actually.
Yeah, so he's not technically an option, although he's on the roster. It would be Jaron Hall or Sean Mannion, and I would venture to say it's Jaron Hall of those 2. There is a different route that's lower level, which would be acquiring someone like Colt McCoy. Some other backup on a roster who's not playing and whose team would be okay with dispatching them someplace else for a moderate draft compensation to help bail the Vikings out. I don't like that option in this case. And then there's the higher level route where you're talking about calling Tom Brady, calling the Rams for Matthew Stafford, checking in with Matt Ryan and Nick Foles and Carson Wentz. So a lot of names there, Giles. A lot of options I threw out. What are your initial thoughts?
So I'll start with the first one that you mentioned, Tom Brady. That is quite an intriguing option for a couple of reasons, because I think when I've talked to a few Vikings fans since yesterday's injury, a lot of them comment how Tom Brady did not want to go to the Jets when he was called after Aaron Rodgers went down. And I think it's incredibly important to denote that the New York Jets and Tom Brady do not have a great relationship. So Tom Brady does not want to work with that organization. And additionally, I think it's important to note that Tom Brady has specifically chosen teams over his entire career that have great offensive lines. And I think if you're going to look at any deficiency for the New York Jets, it was the offensive line. I mean, it's better than some, but it's definitely worse than others, right? And when you think about the Minnesota Vikings, they're now performing like a top elite level offensive line. So you potentially have the recipe book for what Tom Brady requires. And I've heard through the rumblings that Tom Brady wants to win a 3rd Super Bowl with a 3rd franchise. So you just got to dangle that little carrot and see if he'll still come up to the men in purple and get a little cold here for the winter. But my goodness, would that be fun? That would be reliving 2009 just in a little different way.
Wow. I mean, the thought of that is so intriguing, isn't it? Now, that's going to cost you big money, like dollars-wise.
Yep.
And
not impossible, though.
It's not. And you got the problem of it's. I know that O'Connell was on a team with Tom Brady, so there's familiarity there. I don't know that there's much schematic familiarity for Tom and O'Connell in this offense. Maybe I'm way wrong on that, but I don't sense that there is that. So there'd be a lot of wrinkles that you'd have to work through there. But in terms of, and I don't even know if Tom is in shape and wanting to do it and all of that. I mean, I know it sounds like a pipe dream, and truthfully, Giles, where I was yesterday watching the game when this was happening, no one even really mentioned his name, Tom's, because I think people are convinced he's retired.
Yep.
So, but he's only less than a year out from playing, so I'm not convinced he's retired.
Yep. I completely agree. I've always known in the back of my head that he was going to make another run at it. He was just waiting for the right opportunity because I think, one, he was waiting for his contract with the Bucs to expire because that is something for a team to absorb because technically you would have to trade for him. And secondly, similar in a Brian Flores scenario, Tom Brady had a little bit of a legal dance with the Dolphins when they were trying to force a trade over there. So I think he was trying to let the dust of that settle before trying to make ripples again. So I think there's something like that should be considered. But I think he was having some knee issues after the past time he was playing. So I think he was trying to let that kind of recover into a good stance where he could actually come back and play well. But I know without a shadow of a doubt he's going to make one more run. I really, really do. I would put absolute money on it.
Okay. So
hopefully that's with the Vikings, but maybe
it would be super
team.
cool if it was domed or indoor stadium for home games. Probably the top tackle duo in the NFL.
Yep.
Top one or two left tackle, standalone left tackle in the NFL.
Best left tackle, best right tackle.
I think. And then weapons are above average.
Yep.
And that's if you're just being modest.
I would say they're better than what he had with the Bucs when he first moved there. I really do. When you think about Justin Jefferson and what Addison is now coming into, and the fact that TJ Hawkinson is still in his prime. I think Gronkowski, the first season that he was playing there, he didn't hit his true stride until like late in the playoffs. Yeah. When you think about that season. And I think TJ Hawkinson is performing better than what Gronk did at that time.
So, I mean, the structure is there to at least make it a conversation.
Yes. Yep.
Like, if the Vikings call his agent, Don Yee can't, hit the red ignore button on his iPhone. I mean, he's got to at least answer the call and be like, what you thinking,
And if I remember correctly, Tom Brady has family of some sort in Minnesota, correct?
Yeah, he does. So, somehow there's a connection there. Yep.
Yeah.
So it's not total pipe dream. Possible. Yep. Now, let's go down another path of it's not Tom Brady. It's someone, but not him.
Yep.
You threw out the name that I already mentioned, but you threw it out to me last night when we were texting, Matthew Stafford. So I assume you've looked into it to some extent there. So tell us about that.
I have. And just for the audience's sake, to remind everyone, Matthew Stafford was the quarterback when Kevin O'Connell was the offensive coordinator for the Rams when they won the Super Bowl. Yep. And there is tremendous overlap when it comes to the schematics of what we're trying to do from an obvious standpoint.
Oh, yeah.
So if you're looking for a guy that's plug and play that has literally been there, done that,
you wouldn't change anything.
You would step in and go for it. Exactly.
Right.
And I think when you look at the Rams, anytime you're negotiating, right? I've taken a lot of FBI negotiation classes, and you try to look for the leverage of someone else, right? What do they need, and how do I create a scenario where both parties feel like they're winning? What do the Rams need? They need picks, right? So I think there's a scenario that you could trade for Stafford for, let's call it a second-round pick. Maybe throw some conditionals in there. I'm willing to play that song and dance. I don't think a first is in play considering his contract because he did sign a 4-year, $160 million contract with $63 million guaranteed. So this current season, he has a $20 million cap hit. By this time in the season, that's about a $10 million cap hit. Ironically, about the same amount of cap space that we have available. Now, we might have to restructure a few other people to make it work, but you could slide him into this year's cap hit. And next year, his cap hit balloons to, I want to say, $43 million. So it goes a lot bigger. Not to the top of the league. There's plenty of people that are making more than that. But I believe his contract does not become fully guaranteed until the third day of the league year next year. So although this could be considered reckless, you could trade a second round pick to get him this year if you felt like your team was good enough to go the distance and then cut him by the third day of the league year next year. And this is a 1-year rental for a second round pick if you feel like you can go actually truly compete for a Super Bowl. I like this for a lot of reasons because I'm a big fan of this team. I mean, we've been big fans of this team this entire season. They just haven't been realizing it. Finally, they have hitting true stride. They're just now missing a quarterback. And clearly Stafford is in a place to do that. And clearly the Rams are not right now. They're struggling in a lot of ways. They need picks.
Okay, so I was going to ask you about that though, Giles. I'm looking at the Rams. They're 3-5.
Yep.
They're -9 in point differential. They've lost 2 straight. So they were 3-3. Now they're 3-5. You think that they are okay with waving the white flag?
So I think both things can be true. I think they're maybe not necessarily interested in waving the white flag, but I also think they're not delusional in the fact that Stafford doesn't have that long left. And if they're trying to build their team back up, and they do need picks because they've traded a lot of them away, right? So if you're really trying to truly rebuild your team, I don't think they can truly do that with Stafford, considering he probably only has a few more good years left. And you're also in a highly competitive division with the Seahawks and the Niners. And obviously the Cardinals are in rebuild mode as well. But I don't know. I feel like if you're trying to evaluate the entire NFL, they're one of those teams that they're not dumpster fire this year, but they're also not hitting their true form. And they have a lot of deficiencies across their team because they went all in for their Super Bowl.
Okay. I think that the main hang-up in this, Giles, is the Rams dealing with Cooper Kupp and Higbee and
Puka
yeah, and Aaron Donald, and them being like, really? You're trading Stafford away? Like, we're battling here for you. You know, like, we're just going to have Brett Rippon in there for us now. I don't know how you sell that. That's a tough sell for Les Snead and Sean McVay. You know.
Let me throw another scenario past you.
Are you gonna mention Jaron Hall's name?
I was gonna throw it in here. What would you do to this trade? Okay. You send. Now hear me out here. Danielle Hunter. And Jaron Hall, and a first-round pick for Matthew Stafford and Aaron Donald.
Oh, wow. Oh, my gosh.
Do you do that trade?
Yeah. Yes.
I would, too. Because Danielle Hunter is on the last year of his contract. I think you'd probably have to get rid of Stafford after this year. But I think, although I love Danielle Hunter, he's number 1 in sacks right now. I don't know if he's necessarily going to re-sign with the Vikings next year. So you'd have to replace it with an equal but opposite force within the middle that you could keep beyond this year. Now that would be a hefty price tag for Aaron Donald, but I don't know, just throwing out some different options.
Love it.
That would be an awesome option, but I agree. You'd have to keep the Rams internal culture component in mind when doing this.
Yeah, that'd be a tough sell. Okay. So I would, I would do the trade you just said, you know, the blockbuster one that you just threw out there. I would do Stafford for a 2. If I was the Vikings. And like, think of a quarterback of equal stature to Stafford in the league. I might not do it, but because of the familiarity with the scheme and how seamless I think that would be, I would do it with Stafford coming to Minnesota. I mean, he just comes into the meeting room and can participate. I mean, there's
has a revenge component with the Lions.
There you go.
You have to believe he'd be mighty extra
motivated. We're going to chase them down. Yeah. So, all right. So, Brady, Stafford, next. Before we talk more about what's on the roster and what is the most likely scenario, which is next man up, let's go through any of the names that you think are worth talking about. Matt Ryan, Nick Foles, Carson Wentz, Cam Newton, whoever else. Is there anyone else that you think is getting a call here? I like Nick Foles. I think that's a cool option.
Nick Foles. I would say he would be 1B. You can make an argument for 1A, but I'm gonna call it 1B as an option.
Okay.
I think Matt Ryan is at the top of my list if I have to pick from that list. Okay. When I look at all the quarterbacks that can fit our system, I think he could fit into that. He's more of a true quarterback, and I believe that in the areas that he has not succeeded in the recent past, it's because of lack of infrastructure. When he had good infrastructure, he went to a Super Bowl with people that are in our building.
Yep, that's true.
Nick Foles has also won a Super Bowl, so I will not discount that. I think that will be a little bit of a magic carpet ride because he's a guy that when he's doing well has done very well. When he has been given just a standard infrastructure, it's not done well. So I think he'd have to be very, very careful about that decision. Carson Wentz, I think I love him as a person, maybe more than anyone else on that team or on that list there, but I don't think he is in a position to do well with our structure. So honestly, Matt Ryan and your guy, I think
Nick
those
Foles?
could be, I think that could be interesting.
Yeah, Foles is 34. Foles has played in big games. He's done exactly this. Come in for a starter who's being replaced or who is out to take the reins of a team that is competitive and get him to the playoffs and win playoff games. Nick Foles has done that. He won a Super Bowl in U.S. Bank Stadium, after all. So
that's fair.
Yeah.
Got the juice in the building.
Yeah, so I like it. I don't know how the team feels about him and if he can run this off. I don't know, but Nick Foles is a guy. Yeah, and he would be. And he's a guy I would call. So to me, you call Tom Brady, you see what the Rams want for Stafford, and then you knock on the door of Foles or Matt Ryan, and see what happens.
So another important dynamic in this conversation is, what do you want to do next year? Because obviously you are in a really difficult scenario with Kirk Cousins because you're going to let him play out his contract and potentially re-sign him. So now if you do not re-sign him, you are without a starting quarterback next year. And if you continue on this path that the Vikings are on this year, you're not necessarily going to have the greatest draft positioning to trade up to go get a quarterback. If you do, it's going to be very, very expensive, which is definitely an option, but I think that's going to be a point, it's going to be a cause for concern. So do you try to find someone that you can fill in the starter role for the next year or two? You know what I mean? So I think this has implications beyond just this season.
So, but Stafford is an option for multiple years, is he not?
He is. It would just be very expensive. You'd have to restructure his contract and kick money down the road.
But what's it going to cost to have Cousins? It's going to be hugely expensive.
Fair. That's
right?
fair. That's fair. Yeah.
So I don't know if that's 6 of one, half dozen of the other, or if one is significantly more than the other. But Cousins, well, he wasn't going to come cheap. He's going to come cheaper now.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. Yeah, you definitely have power in that negotiation.
I mean, if now Jaron Hall, it would appear, is going to have an opportunity to prove me wrong here.
Yep.
But if I said to you, you have to win a maximum amount of games next year, like chips in the middle for next year. I mean, the best realistically viable option at quarterback is Kirk Cousins. And it's not close.
I agree, because the next up is Tannehill, and he was just benched from his current team.
Yeah,
I don't want him. Yep.
No.
Out of all those options, I want to pick the best, and the best is Kirk Cousins.
I think it is.
I've said it before. I'm not a fan of getting cheaper for the sake of getting cheaper. I am always an advocate of getting better at the quarterback position. Now, if you can ever get better and cheaper, that's always the best case scenario, but that's a really hard formula to crack. So I think that's something that I think sometimes Minnesota Vikings fans lose sight of. They just think, oh, let's get cheaper. Well, let's not get worse in the process. Let's get better first. And then if we find a way to be cheaper and better, then let's do that. But yeah, I completely agree. I think based on the options that are on the table now, minus Tom Brady coming back, Kirk Cousins at the top of the heap.
Yeah. So now he's got to rehab, and you got to re-sign him. And it was probably already not the easiest negotiation of all time with Cousins this offseason, and I would have to think this makes it a bit more complex.
Yes.
Because Cousins has shown his mettle and been tough and good for you and deserves to be a very, very highly compensated quarterback, but he can't run right now. And when you negotiate with him, he will not be back healthy yet when it's time to negotiate.
No.
So it's a very tricky negotiation. I don't know where you start, and I don't know where it finishes. But unless for some reason the Vikings are in a position to pick in the top 5 or they get into the top 5, I just don't imagine a scenario where you have a better option other than Cousins at quarterback for you next year. This really muddies the water for the Vikings, man. This is tough.
They have to pick between now and 3 p.m. tomorrow whether they want to continue the season with Jaron Hall, play it out and see how he goes, and then just let the chips fall where they may, and then tackle that question in the offseason, or figure out what do they want in the do for the next 2 years before 3 p.m. Now, I think it is important to note
because of the trade deadline, you mean?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, tomorrow, the October 31st at 3 p.m. Central. And I do think it's important to note that Jaren Hall, although he did get a strip sack, that cannot be discounted. That was a no-no. Yep. He did go 3 for 4. Now, granted, it's only 4 passes, but he was able to get some completion. So I don't know. Do you let him play one game? Unfortunately, the trade deadline will pass by the time we can make that happen. But I don't know. What were your thoughts of him?
Okay. I didn't have anything hugely positive or negative about him. Watching him in college and his tape, I loved I think he's got a live arm, and I think he's got mobility, So, and I think he's wide-eyed. I think he's got playmaking, like he's looking to make plays, and he's active and moving around, and I don't give him no chance. And I think that there are people in the building who liked him enough to draft him where they drafted him. And then there's people in the building who, whether they liked him or not when they drafted him, they've now been working with him in meetings and practices, and you can't help but grow to like a person in that environment. Yeah. So there's a lot of people in the building who are saying it's Jaren's time. We're throwing him into the lion's den, trial by fire, whatever. But like, what better? They're saying Vikings team builders in the walls of TCO Performance Center with purple shaded glasses, which doesn't make it unrealistic, but they are purple shaded. Yep. They're saying, what better environment to bring up our guy in than this? Offensive line playing great, Justin Jefferson coming back. We're in the middle of a playoff race. Like, they're saying this is a great opportunity for him, right? Yep. As opposed to like Bryce Young, who is on a team that needs more weapons and, had to, the Carolina Panthers, they just won their first game this week, right? Yep. So people are saying Jaren Hall's in a much better situation. This is ideal. What better spot for him than right here to learn? So I think that the most likely outcome here is Jaren Hall getting an opportunity to just be the starter going forward. I think that's what they're going to end up doing. I just kind of talked myself into it now.
I could not agree more because for all the reasons that you mentioned, when you're trying to let a rookie do well, you want to build a great infrastructure. And I can't really think of many deficiencies that our team has that prevents him from doing well beyond himself. Yeah. Right. There's 2 outcomes. They're either you play him and he does phenomenally and he confirms, wow, we got another Brock Purdy on our hands. He can fit into our system. We have some mobility, and more importantly, well, just as importantly, we have a rookie scale contract for the next few years. That gives you a lot more flexibility across a lot of other avenues for you to go do well as a team. The other option here is that he tanks and he does not do well, and then you go get a high draft pick. And then you solve your quarterback problem the other way. Now, there is a secret option C there in the fact that Jaren Hall does not do well. You still have the option to re-sign Kirk Cousins after the year, right? So that gives you maybe the most flexibility at making a decision come March is playing Jaren Hall. Because either he does well and you keep him and you let him be the starter. He doesn't do well and you give yourselves to either draft a quarterback because you have a poor record, or you re-sign Kirk Cousins and go that direction.
Yeah, that's right. I agree with you. Let's look at the schedule here too, Giles.
Okay.
With Jaren Hall as the quarterback.
Yeah.
At Atlanta. I mean,
that's winnable.
I wouldn't be surprised.
They're doing well, but they could win.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if the Vikings won. Hosting New Orleans.
They have a very stout defense, but it's a winnable game.
Yep. At Denver. I mean,
it's
they
winnable.
Can win that game.
No, they beat the Chiefs, but that's also a divisional game, and there's some weird oddity there. But that's a winnable game. It's in the Mile High Stadium.
Bears at home.
Bears at home, winnable.
Raiders on the road.
Winnable.
I mean, so that's 5 right there. Mm-hmm. That with Jaren Hall and with Justin Jefferson coming back soon.
Yep.
I'm not saying they're going to be favored in any of those games, but if all 5 of those games are losses, I will be really surprised. That would surprise me.
Yep.
And then it's Bengals, Lions, Packers, Lions. That's tough. I mean, so, but actually the Packers aren't tough at home.
Yeah. the Packers will be a more winnable game. The Lions game in both scenarios will be tough just because they're a stout roster and it's a divisional game. Those are always a little bit of a toss-up. The Bengals, I would have normally said would have been an issue going into week 5, week 6, week 7. Now they're finally starting to get things to click.
Yeah.
So I think that will definitely be a tough game. I don't know. I mean, you're starting to convince me into Jaren Hall.
That's the way I would go, I think. I mean, I would call Tom Brady for sure. I would check and see what the situation is with the Rams and Stafford. But after that, I think I would forego Foles, Wentz, Matt Ryan. I would forego all that and just go with Jaren Hall.
There is one additional option that we have not mentioned.
What is that?
I don't know if this is technically on the table, but based on the rumblings coming out of their front office, I feel like they're conflicted on what they want to do with him. Kyler Murray. For the second week in a row, I believe he'll be a healthy scratch for all intents and purposes. Now, some people may look at that as intentional tanking. To me, that also maybe seems like they're trying to put him on the trade market and don't want him to get him hurt. Now, I don't know. I have mixed feelings about Kyler Murray and about his performance, his attitude, all those different things. I don't know which ones are well-founded or which ones aren't. But if he was available, would you go after him?
I don't think so. I don't know.
I think I'm agreeing with you. Yeah.
But I think you have a learning curve there with the offense, would you not?
Yep, I agree.
Unless you told me that the offense he's been playing in the NFL is very similar to what O'Connell runs. In that case, I'm a little more open to it, but no, I'd rather go with and see what Jaren Hall has. I mean, because let's say you go 3-2 in this 5-game stretch. Let's say you win your home games and you upset Denver or Atlanta. And you get to the middle of December with 7 wins. Like, that intrigues me with Jaren Hall and his future. I'm kind of interested.
Yeah.
I'm probably not making the playoffs. The Lions are probably going to handle us, but I'm kind of curious now what Jaren Hall has, and it helps. It's another helping hand in the negotiations with Cousins if those go off the rail.
Yep.
So where you can just be like, we had a good run with you, Kirk, and the injury's terrible, but you're still way up here with what you want for a contract. We're down here, plus we have Jaren Hall, plus you're still hurt.
Yep. Can't get it done.
I think you go with Jaren Hall here. I think that's the answer. Unless Tom Brady or Matthew Stafford, you can make those happen. I think you go with Jaren Hall. And I truly will not be surprised if they win 2 of the next 3 games. At Falcons, home Saints, at Broncos. I just won't. I won't be that surprised.
Yep. If I'm making a prediction, and you tell me if you disagree with this, I think they go with Jaren Hall. However, if Tom Brady is even remotely available, this is the type of the move that the Wilfs make. Like a big splash play that sends a message to not only Minnesota fans, but the NFL at large that, hey, we're in this and we're not afraid to put in the resources to go win a championship. Sometimes those resources are misspent sometimes, but they're not afraid to spend when spending is required.
Right. That's right.
And Tom Brady would be one of those big splash moves that seemingly the Wilfs like to make.
Yes, I agree with you. It puts them on NFL Network, which they like. Why aren't we on NFL Network more? I've heard that.
You would be instantly favored, in my opinion, in a lot of different categories.
Yeah.
I mean, really, considering how well they're clicking.
Yep, that's right. Well, we'll see what happens. This was therapeutic, and this was beneficial for me, just talking through it with you guys. I know we did a little bit yesterday via text, but I know you might not believe it, people listening, but what Giles and I just did is what the Vikings did on the plane ride home. It's what Kevin O'Connell and Kwesi and Rob Brzezinski and phone calls with the Wilfs, and this is what they did. They just did what Giles and I did. Now, what conclusion did they come to? We don't know yet. We'll find out soon, but the move, I think it will end up being Jaren Hall, and I'm okay with that.
Agreed.
So, okay. Anything else?
We did just receive the grades from the Packers game.
All right.
Offense and defense, if you want to run through them.
Let's do it. Yes, let's talk this Vikings-Packers game.
Let's start with offense, if you're cool with it.
Yeah, okay. So, first of all, Giles, very, very unimpressed with Green Bay.
I mean, my goodness.
Yuck. Oh, you have to be so discouraged if you're a Packers fan. I mean, what other than A.J. Dillon being, Jerome Bettis light, what? Jair Alexander stinks.
Yep.
You couldn't pressure the passer.
Nope.
Jordan Love is throwing balls into the dirt. Your fans are booing you. Matt LaFleur looks like he wants to leave. Like, awful. Absolute
Not much
bottom.
to like there.
No, it is ugly in Green Bay. That is, man.
They almost went the entire game without a first down.
Yeah, that's embarrassing. I mean, Green Bay is doormat of the division for the foreseeable future, based on what I just saw.
Yeah, not even close.
I mean, I said to we were watching the game. I'm like, I'm sitting there in the end of the third quarter. I'm like, actually, Green Bay's had every opportunity to get back into this game and make it close.
Yep.
And that's kind of an indictment on the Vikings a little bit. But how can you blame them with what they were going through? But I'm like, a better team than Green Bay would be a 1-score game or close to a tie game. But
they would punish that.
Yep, absolutely putrid in Green Bay right now. Don't know which way they're facing, which way they're going, but it ain't the right way. All right, offense, Vikings, top performers, PFF. On my list, Giles, I had Cousins, Addison, Hawkinson, Osborne, and then I put OL. I cheated and put OL. I got to believe that Darrisaw's up there, maybe O'Neal, but I like those skill players on the Vikings offense.
So you got most of them right. Starting at number 5 is Jordan Addison with a 68.6 grade. He struggled a little bit in the run game, which is something that we've known about. I think otherwise he would have been the top 1 or 2. So Jordan Addison for the second week in a row has absolutely balled out. Once Justin Jefferson comes back, that's going to be maybe the most lethal duo in the league. And and call me biased, but looking at it from just sheerly a football perspective, teams aside, those two will be so dynamic. I'm so excited about that. Their ability to separate is becoming second to none. He made Jair Alexander look like a fool. And Jair Alexander is one of the best cornerbacks in the league.
Well, I thought he was. Maybe Addison's just that good. Yeah, okay.
Yep, exactly. So whether that was a little bit of a fluke, he's still very good, right? So Addison absolutely balling out. Coming in at number 4 is T.J. Hawkinson at a 70.7 grade. Same scenario as Jordan Addison, ironically, did well in every single category except for run blocking. Was actually pretty bad in run blocking, which we'll get into here in a second. We averaged 2.2 yards per rush attempt, which was pretty poor. So there was a low-key issue with the run game against them, but that can be explained through a few different varieties. Okay. And then coming in at number 3, Jaren Hall, coming in at a 76.2 grade.
Okay.
Had 11 snaps, 5 passes, 4 run attempts. So, no, it's not time to declare him as Tom Brady yet, but had a decent run out with PFF.
Okay.
And then coming in at number 2 is Johnny Muntz, the best third tight end in the league. At an 85.4 grade. Didn't play a ton of snaps, to be honest, but did well when he was on the field. And then coming in at number 1, our boy Kirk Cousins at a 90.1 grade. He did phenomenal. One of his best games this year, if not in his Vikings career. He did very, very well. So definitely a teardrop for Mr. Cousins there. So
no KJ?
No KJ. He was just outside the top 5. He was a number 6 at a 68.0 grade.
All right.
So ironically, we did not have any offensive linemen in the top 5. Although we had a great game in pass protection, our run blocking brought every single offensive line down.
That's true.
We had a very poor run blocking game.
But, okay, also in this game, I should write these things down too. I should write down what my thought and then the time of the game or something.
Yep.
But I said to someone, I'm like, I wouldn't even run anymore. I would just stop running. We are killing them through the air. They can't guard anyone, and they can't pressure Cousins. Why would you even run anymore at all? Stop running.
Not working.
Yeah. And I'm not Mr. Video Game guy and throw the ball every down of every play of every game, whatever. I'm just saying in this scenario against Green Bay, they couldn't guard you in the pass game. I would just kept throwing it. Okay.
Be responsive. Yeah, exactly.
So, all right. Let's not dwell on who didn't play well. We'll skip past that, Giles. Let's go defense.
Let's go defense. All right. Who you got?
Bynum, Metellus, Wanham. I'll put Hunter and Harrison Smith in there. But Bynum, Wanham, and Metellus I had written down.
I like that. Bynum did not make the top 5. He had a little bit of a rough day in tackling, which brought down his grade pretty severely.
He also dropped a pick.
Yep, that is also a big issue, which was a gettable ball in my opinion. But won't dwell on that one. But number 5 was Ivan Pace Jr. coming in at a 72.9 grade. Didn't play all the snaps necessarily, but did very well in every category that we needed him to. So getting back to true form with him. Coming back at number 4 is Harrison Phillips at an 80.6
He
grade.
did play well. That's true.
He played very well. He was phenomenal in run defense, even though we gave up, I believe, 4.6 yards per carry. It was not because of Harrison Phillips. He did have 2 coverage snaps that brought him down. Otherwise, I think he would have even been higher at an 80.6 grade. Coming in at number 3 is our boy Josh Metellus at an 81.1 grade. He had a rough day in run defense. Otherwise, he probably would have done even better than that, but was elite in coverage. He had a 90.2 grade in coverage. Coming in at number 2, although he didn't play a ton of snaps, about half the snaps was Mekhi Blackman coming in at a 90.1 grade.
That's good,
which I've been really pushing for him to get more involved because when he's been on the field and put in the right scenarios, he's done very well. So very elite in coverage, played 20 coverage snaps. And then coming in at number 1, Danielle Hunter at a 92.7 grade. Had 1 sack, 7 pressures, 6 quarterback hurries. That's exactly who we want Danielle Hunter to be.
Yep. Danielle Hunter impacts the game, man.
Yes, he's a force.
Even when PFF doesn't grade him well, I still look at him and I'm like, that guy changed the game. From a preparation standpoint and then an on-the-field impact. Yeah, he's a big-time playmaker for the Vikings.
Yep.
All right, good. Before we go here, let's talk the rest of our observations from Green Bay and then very quickly on Atlanta, Giles. I was very unimpressed with Green Bay. I was impressed with Cousins. I thought he was playing great. And I was impressed with Kevin O'Connell's play design and play calling. I thought that was impressive too. They really stressed the Packers' pass defense. They put them in compromising positions, wide open receivers everywhere. Very impressed that way. And then there were just a few players on the defense that I really enjoyed watching. I thought Harrison Phillips, Danielle Hunter, DJ Wanham were just a handful for the Packers up front. And then I just love how much you can do with Harrison Smith, and I think a guy like Brian Flores looks at a player like Harrison Smith, and aside from maybe he's not as elite athletically as he used to be in his prime, so that's not really quite there anymore. But other than that, I mean, Harrison Smith is just such a good fit for what Brian Flores wants to do. He wants to pressure and blitz and have different looks and disguise and just he wants to do so many dynamic things, and Harrison Smith is a great player for that because he's not a one-trick pony. He's cerebral and smart and instinctive, and he can talk ball on the sideline with you. He's hyper aware of other people around him, and he has a great perspective on things. So I just think I continue to be sort of in love with the Harrison Smith, Brian Flores dynamic. I think it's super cool to watch.
Yep, especially when you consider that for every single snap on Sunday, except for one, so 67 snaps out of 68, we had 3 safeties on the field.
Oh, cool.
Almost every single snap did we have 3 safeties on the field. Honestly, we're getting back to the reason that we signed Brian Flores, back to that he's the best teacher in the NFL, or at least one of them, for teaching people how to play defense better. And when you consider the fact that the Minnesota Vikings have one of the youngest rosters in the NFL, clearly he's been able to mold that into something that is quite lethal. Now, I wouldn't say we are the best defense in the league, but considering we were one of the worst last year, I don't think we're anywhere near what that was last year. So considering the mileage we've been able to put on this team since 2022, we're in a great format. You're the exact type of recipe that Tom Brady looks for.
Yep.
I'm just kidding.
Nice one. Got that one in there.
One quick plug.
Yep. All righty.
If you're listening, come on over. I have an extra bedroom.
Water's warm. The water is warm. Jump on in. All right. Anything else from the Packer game?
No, I think, across every other category than Cousins, we're starting to do well. I do think Cam Akers does need to get a few more snaps. I think I've been proven time in and time out throughout this season that I think Alexander Mattison is best fit as RB2, not RB1. And I think it's reflected in the yards per rush attempt. But we still won the game. Wins count the same. So if we're trying to, nitpick a little bit and trying to figure out how to optimize this team moving forward, I do think putting Cam Akers is a little bit better of a game plan. So push all contract type stuff out of the way, whoever you're paying the most, and just simply put performance on the field. And I think that might be Cam Akers.
All right. I don't disagree with that. Really good scheme fit, knows this offense. I like his style, the way he runs. I think he's, on passing downs or running downs, you can use him. I think he can pass protect. Yeah, I totally agree with all that. All right, let's talk Falcons. Vikings. Falcons are 4-4, Giles. They are they're 3-1 at home, 1-3 on the road. They're coming off a loss at the Titans. They went to Nashville and lost to Tennessee 28-23. A game where Taylor Heineke, who we all know and are familiar with, went 12 of 21 for 175 yards and a touchdown. So he came in relief of their starting quarterback, Desmond Ridder, who left the game, I presume, and did not come back because of for the same reason. He left with a concussion and did not come back into the game. So Ridder has been a little uneven. He's a guy the Falcons drafted a couple years ago, and they're trying to make it work with him. But it's been uneven, and I won't be surprised if Heineke is the starter next week. I know Brock Purdy came back from a concussion and started the following week, as he started this week against Cincinnati after sustaining a concussion in Minnesota last week, but I would imagine it'll be Taylor Heineke. So with Heineke, Giles, what you are dealing with is someone who is a very good passer on his first read. Pre-snap and then first read, very good. You can put him up there with anyone. When it gets beyond that, second read, third read, not great. Until he starts to scramble and run, then he's a problem because he's mobile and he can pick up yards on the ground. So if you can guard their receivers to get Heineke off that first read and then contain him in the pocket, you're going to beat Taylor Heineke. If you don't do those two things, Heineke can beat you. And that's what I think this game comes down to, is containing Heineke as a runner and doing well initially in pass coverage so that you get Heineke off that initial read.
And lastly, we cannot forget that this is a revenge game for Heineke.
Yes, that's true. It is. Yes. Going against the team that sort of had the first chance to really invest in him and keep him in the Minnesota Vikings, right?
Yep. A little bit of an issue there off the field. Obviously, we separated as units, but it'll be a really interesting game, that's for sure, because they're not a pushover team, but it is a winnable game for the Minnesota Vikings.
Offensive line is okay. Bijan Robinson is a special player. I don't think they've got anything super special to throw to. I mean, Drake London's got some speed. Kyle Pitts has some versatility. Offensive line, all right. Defense is okay, but this is a winnable game for the Minnesota Vikings. Looking at next week's slate right now to see if there's a line already put up. There is. Atlanta favored by 4.5, Giles, in this game. Now, I was curious about this because someone asked me how I thought the game would go next week, and I said, I think it's going to be a low-scoring grinder that the Vikings will win. The over-under is 37.5. That's about as low as you'll ever see. So that's what the odds makers expect too. More news to come here on Cousins. We'll see if the Vikings make a move at the deadline. I think it'll be Jaron Hall who starts, and I think the Vikings will have a good chance to win this game on Sunday. If I had to predict right now, this early in the week, assuming it is Jaron Hall who plays, I think I'd put the Vikings on like a 20-17, 19-16, something low-scoring, one-score victory for the Vikings. How about you?
I am very similar posture. I would guess an 18-24 win for the Minnesota Vikings.
Okay, yeah. So fairly low scoring. A lot of what is going well for the Vikings will continue to go well even without Cousins, Giles, and that's why I talk so optimistically about these next 5 games for the Vikings. I can't wait to see how they respond and to see what happens. And it would be interesting if a month from now they were 6-6, or 7-5, wouldn't it?
Still in it.
Wouldn't that be interesting? Yeah,
I would like that.
Yeah, but we'll see what happens. A lot to sort of uncover and hear about here in the next 48 hours with the trade deadline coming up, the official Cousins injury news, speculation about what they do, who they call, will there be a trade. As mentioned already here on the show, though, Giles and I are sort of feeling like it'll be Jaron Hall, right?
Yep.
See, he'll get his shot to run the show, and we'll see what happens. So the notebook is emptied. Anything else for you to get to, Giles?
No, that wraps it up.
All right, that'll wrap it up. Vikings-Falcons next Sunday. That game is at noon Central Time. It's in Atlanta. See if the Vikings can continue their hot streak and get above 500 for the first time this season. Watch the TV tonight. See what happens to those Detroit Lions. They're hosting the Las Vegas Raiders on Monday Night Football. Would be interesting if they were to drop one at home. Give the Vikings a little more optimism. So,
seriously.
That's going to do it for this episode of the Wobcast 2.0. Vikings-Falcons, noon on Sunday. Watch the game and then come back here and listen to us talk about it next week. Make sure you like, subscribe, and follow the Wobcast 2.0. You can do that wherever you follow all your other favorite podcasts and football content, Google Play, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and, of course, YouTube. On behalf of Giles, this is Wobby signing off for now. Until next time, Skol Vikings.